Young and the Restless. Who is Matt Clark and what's his dark secret? Sharon's terrifying fear exposed? Young and the Restless brings Roger Howarth on the CBS soap as Mitch Bacall, Sienna Bacall's Tamara Braun, husband. But the big twist just came out that he's really Matt Clark, a nasty villain from almost 25 years ago that has been presumed dead for a long, long time. We're going to do a quick dive into history so you understand why Sharon Newman, Sharon Case, and Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, are so freaked out to find Matt Clark is alive and in LA. Young and the Restless. Matt Clark back from the dead. Sharon's tormentor from back in the day, Matt Clark, supposedly died back in 2001. But now the mega-villain popped up alive and ready to do bad things to Sharon and Nick. Again, now I was super excited when we first heard that YandR landed soap vet Roger Howarth. If you don't know his work from other soaps, Roger is a super nice guy, very soft-spoken, kind of shy in real life, and he plays villains so well. First, Young and the Restless revealed that he was playing Sienna's husband, Mitch. But then came the shocking reveal, he is recast mega monster Matt Clark. He terrorized and traumatized Sharon on and off from the early 1990s up until his death in 2001. And he did a lot of horrible things to Nick as well. But right now, Matt's living undercover as Mitch. And nobody in Los Angeles knows about his sordid and criminal past in Genoa City because Holden Novak, Nathan Owens, has known him for years and years and has no idea. Longtime Young and the Restless watchers obviously were stunned to hear the name Matt Clark, but not as surprised as Sharon when she bumped into Matt, who lied and said his name was Mitch. He started gaslighting Sharon immediately, insisting his name was Mitch. She's mistaken. He doesn't know what she's talking about. And then he walked away and had the bouncer block her from going into his club. A villain's origin. The early days of Matt Clark. So if you're newer to Young and the Restless or need a refresher because it's been 2 decades, here's the important stuff real quick that you need to know about Matt Clark. When they first introduced the character onto YandR, it was 1994, and hunky Eddie Cibrian originated the role. In 2000, Russell Lawrence took over the role for 4 months, and then Rick Hurst took over as Matt Clark up until his presumed death in 2001. Rick Hurst is another one who plays villains like nobody's business. He is incredible. So, when Matt first came onto the scene on YandR, it was way back when Nick and Sharon were in high school. She dated Matt, and then he and Nick quickly became enemies, and then rivals for her attention because Nick also wanted to be with Sharon. Now, eventually she did choose Nick over Matt, and then the two guys got into a terrible physical fist fight altercation, and Nick was badly beaten. Not long after that, Matt raped Sharon, and that triggered her to go into this deep depression. Young and the Restless. Matt reveals Sharon's secret as payback. And then Matt started dating Sharon's best friend, Amy Wilson, Robin Scott/Julian Morris. So, at a high school dance, Nick and Sharon won king and queen. And that set Matt off. So, he went to Nick and said that Sharon was not a virgin, which Nick thought she was. And Matt also said that Sharon had a baby that she gave up for adoption when she was 16. And that right there, that references to Mariah and Cassie's birth, just by the way. So, at first when Matt told him all this, we had Nick going and confronting Sharon. He was angry that she had hid this stuff from him, but hothead Nick eventually got past it, and he proposed to Sharon. And then right before her wedding to Nick, we saw Sharon finally tell Nick that Matt had raped her back in the day. Nick was furious and he went to confront Matt, but Nick found Matt shot and lying in a pool of his own blood. However, he survived and then he accused Nick of shooting him. And of course, Matt was lying, but Nick was arrested, found guilty, and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Young and the Restless. Nick's exoneration and Matt's new identity. Well, Victor wasn't going to let this stand. And he tracked down Matt's ex-girlfriend Amy, who was in a mental health facility suffering from PTSD. And it turns out it was Amy who shot Matt because he had also raped her. This guy is a horrible creep. So Nick was exonerated, and then Matt ran away from Genoa City in 1996. Fast forward 4 years later, it's 2000. Matt returns with a new face. He had gotten plastic surgery to alter his appearance. And in addition to a new face, he had changed his name to Carter Mills. So when he first came back using the fake identity of Carter, it was initially Russell Lawrence as the recast. He played the role from July through October of 2000. And then in October, Rick Hurst took over the recast role and played Matt until the character died in 2001. So just for purpose of clarity, I'm not going to call him Carter. I'm going to keep calling him Matt, even though he was using the name Carter back then. Young and the Restless. Matt gets Nick tossed in jail. Okay. So, back in 2000, Matt came back to Genoa City, and he got a job at Crimson Lights, which back then Nick owned with Sharon. And right away, he started causing trouble. So, Matt got this woman that he was sleeping with to frame Nick for selling drugs. And Nick wound up going to jail. And while he was behind bars, Matt got close to Sharon, but she didn't know it was her high school rapist because he had a new face. So Matt drugged Sharon, and he nearly raped her again. But by then, Nick had gotten out of prison and showed up just in time to save Sharon. And finally, after a bunch of bad stuff, the police realized that Carter was really Matt with plastic surgery, and they started a manhunt for him. Meanwhile, Sharon was with Matt in a remote cabin, and he almost raped Sharon again, but that time Victor intervened and stopped it. So later, Matt's ex-girlfriend, the one with PTSD, drove them over a cliff trying to kill herself and Matt. She survived, but his injuries were too severe. And he was in the hospital laying there dying, still scheming till the bitter end. And Matt lied and told Nick that he raped Sharon again. So then Matt pulled out his own breathing tube to try and frame Nick for his murder. Young and the Restless. Matt's last dying scheme traumatizes Sharon and Nick. Nick was initially a suspect, but was later exonerated. And then Sharon found out she was pregnant. So because Matt had lied and said he raped her, Nick was worried that the creep was the father of her baby. And Nick was pressuring Sharon to do a paternity test while she was pregnant. But back then it was a lot riskier for a fetus. So she refused to do it and Nick was angry and he and Sharon argued, and then she tripped and fell, went into early labor, and the baby was stillborn. They did posthumous paternity test, and it confirmed that Nick was the father. So this series of events traumatized Sharon and Nick, and it messed up their relationship. Bottom line, Matt's a terrible human, a repeat rapist, a criminal, and an all-around creep. And Sienna has no idea she is married to a monster. She does not know the name Matt Clark, and he wants to keep his wife Sienna in the dark and keep living his fake identity as Mitch. Young and the Restless. Genoa City Matt has seen desperate its fair share of of charming strangers with shadowy pasts. But Matt Clark may be one of the most unsettling new faces to arrive in town in years. On the surface, he appears calm, composed, even comforting. Exactly the kind of man who knows how to disarm suspicion with a soft smile and measured words. But on the Young and the Restless, viewers know one thing for certain. No one arrives in this town by accident. And if Sharon Newman's growing sense of dread is any indication, Matt Clark isn't just hiding a secret. He may be hiding something truly dangerous. Matt Clark, a man who knows too much. Matt Clark didn't crash into Genoa City with fireworks or scandal. He slipped in quietly, weaving himself into conversations and situations with almost surgical precision. He asks the right questions. He listens more than he talks. And most alarmingly, he seems to know things he shouldn't. Details about people's lives that were never offered freely. For someone new in town, Matt has an uncanny familiarity with Genoa City's emotional fault lines. He knows where to press, when to retreat, and how to present himself as trustworthy. That alone would be unsettling, but paired with Sharon's reaction to him, it becomes downright chilling. Because Sharon Newman doesn't scare easily anymore. Why Sharon can't shake the feeling he's dangerous. Sharon has survived cult manipulation, psychological breakdowns, romantic betrayals, and literal kidnappings. She's learned, sometimes the hard way, how to trust her instincts. And right now, every instinct she has is screaming that Matt Clark is not who he claims to be. At first, Sharon tries to rationalize it. Maybe it's just her past trauma resurfacing. Maybe she's projecting old fears onto a new face. But the feeling doesn't fade, it intensifies. There's something in Matt's eyes when he looks at her. Not warmth. Not curiosity. Recognition. As if he already knows her. A past that doesn't add up. The more Sharon learns about Matt, the more holes appear in his story. His background is vague. His explanations are rehearsed. When pressed for specifics, places he's lived, people he's known, jobs he's held, his answers are technically complete, yet emotionally empty. That's a classic red flag in Genoa City. Rumors begin to swirl that Matt Clark may not even be his real name. There are hints that he's reinvented himself before. And not just once. Is he running from someone? Or worse, is he hunting someone? Sharon begins to suspect that Matt didn't choose Genoa City randomly. He came here for a reason, and she's terrified that reason might be her. The dark secret. A connection to Sharon's trauma? Speculation is mounting that Matt Clark may be connected to one of the darkest chapters of Sharon's life. Perhaps someone who crossed her path during a time when she was vulnerable and doesn't fully remember everything that happened. What if Matt was there during a period Sharon has blocked out? What if he knows things about her past that even she doesn't remember? There's a growing theory that Matt may have been involved in psychological manipulation, possibly tied to cult behavior, experimental therapy, or a shadowy organization that preys on emotionally fragile people. Sharon's history makes her the perfect target, and Matt's calm demeanor could be the mask of someone who specializes in control. That would explain Sharon's visceral reaction to him. Not fear born of imagination, but fear rooted in memory. Is Matt Clark a predator hiding in plain sight? The scariest possibility is that Matt Clark isn't acting out of revenge or obsession, but out of habit. What if this is who he is? A predator who blends in. A manipulator who studies his victims. A man who gains power by making others doubt themselves. If so, Sharon recognizing the danger early could make her his biggest threat. And predators don't like being seen. That raises the stakes dramatically. Because if Sharon starts digging too deeply, Matt may feel forced to act. Why no one else sees it, yet? What makes this storyline especially terrifying is that no one else shares Sharon's concern. In fact, Matt has managed to charm several Genoa City residents. He's polite. He's thoughtful. He says all the right things. Which leaves Sharon isolated, once again questioning whether she can trust her own mind. That's the most dangerous position for her to be in. Viewers have seen this pattern before. Sharon senses danger, gets dismissed, and then pays the price for being right too late. The show seems poised to revisit that trauma, only this time with a psychological thriller edge that cuts deep. A slow-burn horror story unfolding. This isn't a storyline built on explosions or sudden reveals. It's a slow, creeping dread, the kind that settles into your bones. Matt Clark doesn't threaten. He observes. He waits. And the longer he stays in Genoa City, the more it feels like he's tightening an invisible net. Sharon's nightmares are returning. Her anxiety is spiking. Old fears she thought she'd conquered are resurfacing with a vengeance. And Matt is always nearby when it happens. Coincidence? On The Young and the Restless, that word doesn't exist. What happens when Sharon confronts him? The real turning point will come when Sharon finally confronts Matt Clark directly. Will he crack? Or will he flip the script, calmly suggesting that Sharon is confused, unstable, imagining things? If Matt is as dangerous as Sharon fears, that confrontation could be the moment he reveals his true face, or decides she's become too much of a risk. Either way, Sharon is standing on the edge of something terrifying. Final thought, trust the fear. The Young and the Restless has always excelled at emotional storytelling, but this arc feels different, darker, more intimate, and deeply psychological. Matt Clark isn't just a mystery. He's a mirror reflecting Sharon's deepest fears back at her. And the most chilling possibility of all? Sharon may be right about him, and that truth could put her life in danger. As this story unfolds, one thing is certain. Matt Clark's dark secret won't stay buried forever. And when it comes out, Genoa City may realize too late that Sharon wasn't paranoid. Restless fans thought they'd seen every possible twist Genoa City could throw at them. The show pulls off the unthinkable. A name long buried in the show's dark history is suddenly whispered again, sending chills through the canvas. Matt Clark, back from the dead. Yes, that Matt Clark, the manipulative schemer, the violent sociopath, the man whose crimes left scars on the Abbott family that never truly healed. For decades, Matt Clark has existed only as a nightmare from the past, until now. And if the rumors swirling through Genoa City are true, his return could rewrite history, reopen old wounds, and ignite a war no one is ready for. A ghost from Genoa City's darkest era. Matt Clark is not just another villain. He's one of Young and the Restless' most disturbing antagonists, especially for longtime fans who remember the terror he unleashed in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Obsessive, violent, and ruthlessly calculating, Matt Clark wasn't driven by power or money. He was driven by control. His fixation on Jill Abbott became one of the show's most harrowing storylines, culminating in psychological torment, physical danger, and emotional devastation that shaped Jill for years to come. Matt wasn't flashy like Victor Newman or charming like Jack Abbott. He was cold, unrelenting, and terrifyingly realistic. When Matt Clark was finally presumed dead, it felt like closure. A grim chapter closed. Or so everyone thought. Why bring Matt Clark back now? Soap operas thrive on resurrection, but Young and the Restless is strategic about when it plays the back from the dead card. So why Matt Clark, and why now? The timing couldn't be more suspicious. Genoa City is already fractured. The Abbott family is struggling with internal betrayals. Jack and Billy are barely holding their fragile truce, and Jill Abbott, strong as ever, has once again positioned herself as a power player who refuses to be sidelined. Meanwhile, secrets from the past are bubbling dangerously close to the surface. Matt Clark's return wouldn't just shock viewers, it would weaponize history. And history is something Jill Abbott has spent a lifetime trying to outrun. The first clues: is Matt already watching? The most chilling aspect of this potential return is how subtle the signs have been. A mysterious figure spotted at a distance. Unexplained phone calls that disconnect the moment Jill answers. Old case files quietly pulled from storage. A sense that someone knows things no one else should. Longtime viewers know this show doesn't plant seeds without intention. These breadcrumbs feel deliberate, like someone is circling Genoa City, studying it, waiting for the perfect moment to step out of the shadows. And if Matt Clark survived, he wouldn't come back loudly. He'd come back strategically. Jill Abbott, the target once more? If Matt Clark is alive, one question rises above all others. Is Jill Abbott in danger again? Jill is no longer the vulnerable woman she once was. She's a titan, sharp, wealthy, and fiercely protective of her legacy. But trauma doesn't disappear just because someone gets stronger. And Matt Clark knows Jill in ways no one else ever has. A confrontation between these two wouldn't just be dramatic, it would be psychological warfare. Would Jill sense him before she sees him? Would old fears resurface? Or would she be ready this time, prepared to destroy the man who once tried to destroy her? There's something deeply poetic and horrifying about Matt Clark returning just as Jill stands tall and unshakable. He may want to prove she's never truly escaped him. The Abbott fallout, Jack and Billy on high alert. Matt Clark's resurrection wouldn't just affect Jill, it would rock the entire Abbott family. Jack Abbott, ever the protector, would not hesitate to mobilize if he believed Jill was threatened. Jack's calm, calculated exterior would crack instantly if Matt Clark resurfaced. Old guilt, old rage, old promises to keep Jill safe, this time at any cost. Billy Abbott, however, might react differently. Impulsive and emotionally driven, Billy could see Matt's return as a personal reckoning. A chance to confront the darkness that haunted his family long before his own downward spirals. And let's be real, Billy taking matters into his own hands could be exactly what Matt Clark wants. A villain reborn or a monster evolved. If Matt Clark is alive, he won't be the same man who disappeared decades ago. Time changes people, especially people who've been presumed dead. Did he spend years in hiding? Was he imprisoned under another identity? Or did he orchestrate his own disappearance, waiting patiently for the right moment to return? This version of Matt Clark could be smarter, colder, and far more dangerous. In the modern Genoa City landscape, full of surveillance, social media, and corporate power, Matt wouldn't rely on brute force alone. He'd manipulate systems, identities, and alliances. He'd strike where it hurts the most: reputations, families, and secrets. Could Matt Clark be pulling strings already? Here's where things get truly intriguing. What if Matt Clark isn't just returning, but has already been influencing events behind the scenes? What if recent betrayals, sudden power shifts, or unexplained crises weren't coincidences? Soap operas love the long con. And Matt Clark, of all villains, is perfectly suited to be the invisible architect of chaos, especially if his goal is revenge. Revenge on Jill. Revenge on the Abbotts. Revenge on a town that thought it buried him. Victor Newman enters the equation. And then there's Victor Newman. If Matt Clark resurfaces, Victor would not underestimate him. In fact, Victor might see Matt as either a threat or an opportunity. Two predators in one town never coexist peacefully, but they sometimes circle each other before striking. Could Victor use Matt's vendetta to his advantage? Or would Victor decide Matt Clark is too unstable to exist in his world? A Victor versus Matt Clark showdown would be a slow-burning, high-stakes chess match. One Genoa City might not survive unscathed. The emotional weight for longtime fans. This storyline isn't just about shock value. It's about legacy. Matt Clark represents an era of the young and the restless when villains were deeply personal, when fear wasn't about corporate takeovers, but about psychological terror. Bringing him back isn't nostalgia, it's a statement. It says, the past is never truly gone. For longtime viewers, this resurrection would hit hard. It would force characters and fans to revisit trauma, growth, and survival. It would test how far Genoa City has come, and how vulnerable it still is. How could Matt Clark be exposed? Soap law dictates that no secret stays buried forever. The real question is how Matt Clark's return would be revealed. A dramatic face-to-face with Jill? A shocking reveal at a public event? A deathbed confession from someone who helped him disappear? Or worse, what if Jill realizes the truth on her own, piecing together clues only she recognizes? That moment, when recognition hits, when the past collides with the present, could be one of the most powerful scenes YandR has delivered in years. Final thoughts: a storm is coming. If Matt Clark is truly back from the dead, Genoa City is standing on a fault line. This isn't just another villain arc. It's a reckoning. Old sins will resurface. Old alliances will be tested. And survival won't be guaranteed. Jill Abbott may be stronger than ever, but strength doesn't erase history. Jack and Billy may unite, but unity doesn't ensure victory. And Matt Clark? If he's returned, his name it's not fear. Before doors locked a second faster and voices dropped to cautious murmurs, Matt Clark was just a boy who watched too closely. He learned early that people told you who they were when they thought no one was listening. Matt grew up in a narrow house with peeling paint and walls so thin that secrets traveled like smoke. His father, Richard Clark, was a man who believed silence was discipline and anger was strength. His mother, Elaine, mastered the art of disappearance while still sitting at the kitchen table. She smiled when required. She endured when necessary. And she never intervened. Matt noticed that too. At school, teachers praised him for being observant. He finished assignments early, corrected their mistakes, and raised his hand only when he knew the answer was airtight. The other kids found him unsettling, not cruel, not yet, but sharp in a way that made them feel examined. Matt didn't push or shove. He watched. He waited. And when he spoke, it was often to say something uncomfortably true. "You lie when you're scared," he once told a classmate who'd blamed him for a broken window. The boy burst into tears. Matt didn't understand why that made him the villain. The first lesson: power lives in information. His father's temper followed patterns. Matt mapped them in his head like constellations. A slammed door meant one thing. A long pause before footsteps meant another. Knowing what came next didn't stop the pain, but it gave Matt something just as valuable: control. By the time he was 12, Matt understood something most adults never did. People were predictable if you paid attention long enough. He also learned that goodness didn't protect you. Elaine tried to be good, quiet, accommodating, and she suffered for it every single day. Matt decided then that he would never be like her. The incident that changed everything. The night Richard Clark left was not dramatic. No shouting. No smashed plates. Just a suitcase, a muttered excuse about needing space, and a door that never opened again. Elaine cried for weeks. Matt didn't. He stood in his bedroom, staring at the indentation in the carpet where his father's boots had always rested, and felt something cold and solid settle in his chest. Abandonment wasn't random. It was a choice, and choices had consequences. From that night forward, Matt began collecting people's weaknesses the way others collected baseball cards. Who needed approval? Who feared humiliation? Who crumbled when ignored? He didn't act on this knowledge right away. That came later. First, he practiced restraint. High school, the mask is perfected. By 16, Matt Clark was well-liked. That surprised everyone, except Matt. He learned humor carefully, delivering it dry and understated. He offered help at exactly the right moments. Teachers trusted him. Students leaned on him. Girls found him intriguing, though none could quite explain why. He never raised his voice. Never lost his temper. And when conflicts erupted around him, Matt somehow always walked away clean. When a rival student was expelled for cheating, no one noticed Matt's anonymous tip. When a bully transferred schools after a cascade of social humiliation, no one connected the dots. Matt simply listened, nudged conversations, planted questions that grew like weeds. He told himself he was restoring balance. After all, weren't bad people supposed to face consequences? The lie he believed. Matt didn't think of himself as cruel. He believed he was fair. In his mind, he never started fires. He only removed the fireproofing. If someone fell apart afterward, that was proof they were weak to begin with. This belief hardened into doctrine. Weakness deserved exposure. Hypocrisy deserved punishment. Power belonged to those willing to take it. The world wasn't broken, Matt decided. It was inefficient. College, where morality becomes optional. College was freedom disguised as opportunity. Matt studied political science, not because he cared about policy, but because it taught him systems. Hierarchies. Influence. The quiet machinery that decided who rose and who disappeared. He excelled. Professors praised his essays for their clarity and ruthless logic. One even joked, "You should run things someday." Matt smiled and said nothing. Late nights were spent in debates that grew darker as the hours passed. While others argued ideals, Matt argued outcomes. When someone spoke passionately about justice, Matt asked who would enforce it. When another preached empathy, Matt asked who would exploit it. They called him cynical. He preferred realistic. The first line he crossed. The first time Matt truly ruined someone, he was 22. A campus activist, charismatic, beloved, loudly moral, had privately threatened a student who challenged him. Matt witnessed it by accident. The activist laughed it off afterward, confident in his reputation. Matt watched him too. He gathered screenshots, witness accounts, patterns of behavior. He released the information slowly, strategically, ensuring maximum impact and minimum traceability. The fallout was brutal. Scholarships revoked. Friends vanished. A public apology that satisfied no one. Matt told himself it was deserved. Yet as he walked across campus afterward, he felt something new coil in his chest. Not guilt, but exhilaration. For the first time, he understood how easy it was. The birth of the villain. That was the moment Matt Clark stopped asking whether he should act. He only asked how. The world rewarded people like him. Those who could smile while pulling strings, who understood that perception mattered more than truth. He didn't need a throne or a title. He needed leverage. And leverage, he knew, was everywhere. People called him brilliant, strategic, necessary. They didn't know they were standing at the beginning of something far darker. Because villains aren't born screaming into the night. They're born quietly. In classrooms. In kitchens with thin walls. In moments where goodness fails and intelligence steps in to fill the gap.